The Recogne Bastogne German War Cemetery is in Belgium's Ardennes, in the hamlet of Recogne near the village of Foy, and it contains 6,807 German war dead from the Second World War. The site traces back to the final months of the war. In early February 1945, the U.S. Army established a temporary burial ground in this area with separate sections for the American and German casualties. After the war, the American graves from the nearby temporary cemetery were removed and in 1948 transferred to permanent U.S. military cemeteries and in some cases returned to the United States. In the years that followed, German graves from many scattered burial sites across Belgium were brought here together. That is why this cemetery includes not only men killed in the 1944-1945 Ardennes offensive, but also Germans who died in 1940 and during the occupation years. Today, the cemetery is maintained by the Volksbund, the German War Graves Commission, and it officially opened to the public on September 25th, 1960.
Did you know that just outside the village of Foy, the Foy from Bastogne, the town that Easy Company attacked and took in Band of Brothers, there's a German war cemetery right outside of it. I didn't know that. I'm going to be honest with you, normally when I come to these kind of cemeteries, I come well prepared. I like to tell the stories of several different individuals who are buried at these cemeteries. Just yesterday, I was in Luxembourg at the Sandweiler German War Cemetery, and I did a video on that one, telling the stories of several different individuals who are buried there with the printed out pictures, and I found their stones and just told a little bit about their story so we could better understand both sides of the war. The idea of coming to a German war cemetery can seem morbid, if we're being honest, but it's not about glorifying the regime that these men died for. It's about enhancing our historical understanding of both sides so we can better understand the bigger picture. And that's why it's important to come to places like this to learn about them. So I'm gonna try to keep this video as the same style as my other cemetery videos by telling the stories of individual people here, but I'm doing the research on hand, so it might not be as detailed as you're used to, but I hope we can still learn something from this video. Here we come to the grave of Karl Theodor Pauli. He was born in Bremen in 1914 and was killed on Christmas Day 1944 during the Battle of the Bulge in the Bastogne sector. By that point, the German offensive was bogging down and the fighting around the roads, the villages, and the woods north of Bastogne was brutal and close range. Pauli died in that struggle, and he is buried here at the Recogne Bastogne German Cemetery, one of the many German soldiers who fell during the attempt to break through and seize the Bastogne road network. He shares a grave with one unknown German soldier and Fritz Breithaupt. So here's a common thing you'll see at many German war cemeteries is that multiple people are sharing one cross, and it's double-sided. Like for example, we have Karl Theodor Pauli's cross right here on this side, and if you go to the other side, you'll see unknown German soldiers and Kurt Oswald. And it's like this by design. That's because the German Volksbund themselves say that these places aren't about glorifying, it's about remembering. This particular cross looks interesting because the top name here doesn't have a first name. All it does is have a last name and his date of death. Also Christmas death. Here we have the grave of Joseph Price. He was born on the 5th of February, 1918, while the First World War was still raging on. He was killed on the 4th of January, 1945, during the fighting around Bastogne in the final phase of the Battle of the Bulge. And here he is, buried at the German War Cemetery just outside of Foy. He's one of the many German soldiers who died as the offensive collapsed under the American counterattacks. Here we come to the grave of Gunther Spies. He was an Obergefreiter born on the 28th of February, 1923, and he died on the 10th of January, 1945. His death falls in the final phase of the Battle of the Bulge, when the German offensive had already failed and the fighting around the Bastogne sector turned into a brutal struggle to hold the ground and then pull back under constant American pressure. He was just 21 years old, and today he lies here among the 6,000 plus other German soldiers who did not survive the Ardennes winter. He shares a grave with an unknown German soldier, as well as Robert Keinzel. Robert Keinzel was a lieutenant born on the 21st of April, 1918, and he died on the 3rd of January, 1945. As an officer, he would have been responsible for keeping men organized and moving in a battle that had become chaotic and exhausting, with heavy losses in the snow-covered woods and villages around Bastogne. Early January 1945 marked the push that drove the Germans back from the Bulge, and Robert was killed in that fighting. His grave here is a reminder of the battle's deadliest days continued even after the initial breakthrough failed. And just across here, you have the grave of Wilhelm Schrader, Karl-Heinz Illing, and again, another unknown German soldier. In the fighting around Bastogne, Foy, and the surrounding areas, the main active German force was the 5th Panzer Army. The divisions that were most closely tied to the attacks on Bastogne were the 2nd Panzer Division, the Panzerlehr Division, and the 26th Volksgrenadier Division. So as I'm walking through the cemetery, through the rows of crosses, many of the men that are buried here likely fought in one of these formations in the battles for the villages and the road network around Bastogne in the winter of 1944 and 1945. So I just ran into a local and he was telling me an interesting fact about this chapel behind me. The red brick from it comes from the Eifel region in Germany, and when they were building it, they for the chapel for the cemetery here, they brought the stones from that region and placed it here. I mentioned that there was an American cemetery as well, and it's just up the hill there. I don't know if you can see it, but the two flags flying, the American and the Belgian flag, is where the original American cemetery was. There was roughly about 2,000 buried there, and in 1948, those bodies were then moved to other larger cemeteries, for example, in Luxembourg. And that brings us to an end of today's video that was a spontaneous visit at this German war cemetery. This video is part of my Luxembourg and Bastogne series, so if you want to see those videos, go check them out. And if you feel like you learned something today, then please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and a comment. I'd greatly appreciate it. And until the next time, I'll see you guys then.